well as the All-Star break officially comes to an end. We're going to talk about all the other news and notes to come out of the Tigers organization this week, as well as start finally looking ahead to playing some baseball again, all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Friday, July 19th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Tigers is brought to you by Booking.com. Yeah, the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rival. So check out Booking.com for your stay today. Welcome in, welcome all. Happy Friday to everyone. Hope you all had a fantastic week. The All-Star break is officially over, and we are back to playing some baseball this weekend. We will preview the Toronto Blue Jays series at the end of the show, start talking about some ball actually being played on the darn field yet again. All-Star break, it's needed. It's always fun. There's a lot of festivities. There's a lot of stuff going on, right? It's a very busy week, especially at the beginning of the week. But once you start getting into Wednesday and Thursday, man, it's like, can we just start playing baseball again? And that is back today, assuming you are listening on Friday. But I do want to go through and kind of just have a mop-up type of episode and just talk about everything that has been going on this week that we haven't talked about yet. Like I said, the All-Star break is great for a lot of reasons. And one of the reasons that it is good is there's so much information and news coming out of the baseball world every All-Star break. So we've obviously focused on the main things. I just want to take an episode and really dive into the rest, kind of, so we can get all caught up, right? When games start being played again today, we'll be completely caught up. There's nothing I want to talk about or that I haven't had time to talk about. We can just get it all out there, get back up to speed, and then start focusing on baseball and the trade deadline that looms ahead. So I want to start off with the Futures game. That was, I believe, on Sunday. The Tigers had two representatives in there. Max Clark, former and somewhat controversial, I'll say, first-round pick for the Detroit Tigers last year, was in that ball game, did record a hit. And then Hao-Yu Lee, who is the prospect the Tigers received for half a season of Michael Lorenzen, which, for as much heat as I've kind of given this front office lately, I do think that is more and more every day looking like a bigger and bigger win within the landscape of this organization, was that trade to the Phillies with Dave Dombrowski, albeit as well. One of, if not the first trade. I don't remember which one happened first, the Soto trade or the Jimenez trade, but regardless, one of the first trades that Scott Harris made when he took over this organization was with Dombrowski, and that one's Gregory Soto for Matt Vierling is pretty much how that one's turning out, which I guess, depending on if you're a bigger fan of poor controlling relievers or of, utility players, that could really go either way. That's not looking like a huge win either direction, albeit Vierling with a big power surge this year. That being said, I mean, the Hao-Yu Lee for Michael Lorenzen trade is looking to be somewhat promising. Hao-Yu Lee still has a long way to go before he is major league ready, but he has been raking this season. I'm really glad he got an opportunity to kind of showcase his skills and just put his name out on the map a little bit more. The biggest disappointment I had, they went, I think, 1 for 5 or 1 for 6 combined between the two of them. Lee grounded out to second base, and then Clark went, I think, 1 for 3 or 1 for 4 on the day. So they didn't set the world on fire. They didn't look terrible though either. I have no issue with how they looked. First off, one of my favorite baseball events of the entire season is the Futures game. Just seeing all the top prospects in ball play against each other is so fun. And I think that they should advertise it and market that game way, way, way more than they do. Last year, the Tigers had Colt Keith and Justin Henry Malloy represent them in the game. So obviously both of them now playing for the Major League Detroit Tigers. So kind of a quick turnaround there. Lee and Clark will not be quite the same as far as like, speed to get through to the majors, but one of my favorite sporting events of the year. And there was a lot of really good pitching and that's just kind of the way that baseball is headed. Like we're really close to like peak performance of like what the human body can do with a baseball, or we're very close. I think the pitcher that I enjoyed watching the most was Noble Meyer, who is a Marlin and was a very highly touted prospect and has dealt with some injuries, but is still very young and still an incredible arm talent. So seeing him in that ball game was nice. I think he actually faced Max Clark at one point too, but there's so much good pitching. Colorado, believe it or not, has some pitching representatives in this game. Milwaukee always has some, etc. Just a really, really fun ball game to watch. And yeah, the Tigers prospects, while they didn't set the world on fire, didn't look completely awful or overmatched either, for whatever that is worth to you. More of just kind of like an all-star game between top prospects. And one of my, like I said, for the 8th time now, favorite games of the year. We can move on. Kerry Carpenter. There was an update. It really wasn't an update, but there was an article written by Evan Petzold of The Free about Kerry Carpenter's injury status. He sat down and talked with Carpenter a little bit, just tried to pick his brain a little bit about how long he thought he would be out or when he expects to be back, maybe. And we learned nothing. To be completely honest, we did not learn much. And that's obviously nothing to do with Evan. Evan's great and fantastic at his job and is a great dude as well. But just like Carpenter doesn't know what he doesn't know. He's like, yeah, I don't know. Really, all the quotes we got out of it were, I think he said, I can't imagine I will be out the rest of 2024. And then he followed it up with, I have no timetable for my return. So, I mean, it's been dang near 2 months since he's played already. It's been already a very long time, and I do not anticipate him being right around the corner. I personally, and I am, as we say, notoriously not a doctor, okay? However, I would be pretty surprised if he did play again. I mean, you're talking about like he would need a rehab stint. That would be probably a week or longer, depending on, at what level you start them out at, getting the timing back and everything. And then like back injuries are no joke, man. Those aren't just like, oh, you just like get over a back injury. Like, no, you don't, anybody who's had back issues is aware. You don't realize how much you use your back and how important it is on just day-to-day life. Nonetheless, swinging a baseball bat as hard as you can until it is injured. So we're hoping for a recovery for the optimist crowd out there, for the really positive crowd. I mean, if you want the Tigers to make a run and you want them to make a wild card push of any magnitude, you're going to need Carpenter to be healthier sooner rather than later, because he is quite literally was your best hitter before getting hurt. It wasn't even really close or arguable. So getting that back into your lineup post-deadline, in the month of September, maybe. I don't expect him to be back in August no matter what. I think best case scenario would be him playing the last month of the season. And I would imagine if the Tigers are well out of it, then they wouldn't push that too hard and they would just err on the side of caution. So that's kind of where I stand. But again, I'm not a doctor. It could come out tomorrow that he's going to start a rehab assignment. What do I know? I have no clue the status of his lumbar situation. I don't know. But just from the sights and sounds that I've seen and heard, that's kind of where I'm standing on the whole thing. Let's talk about kind of the biggest topic I want to really dive into on this episode, a John Morosi tweet, which is always interesting to break down. Just ask the Blue Jays. We will be back to talk about that right after this. Got to tell you today about our friends over at Booking.com. With summer travel heating up, especially for baseball games, it's time to explore the U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rivals. A Tigers fan can go to Minnesota, have a great time. I love going to Cleveland. I talk about it all the time, right? Never going to catch me rooting for the Guardians, though. Okay. Kansas City, fantastic place. Went with my dad. Great barbecue, great park. awesome time. Tigers won when I went to there as well. And with all these trips, I use Booking.com. From hotels that overlook stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this Major League season. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. So book today on Booking.com on the site or in the Booking.com app. Booking.com. Booking.yeah. Also got to talk to y'all about our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, starting pitching strikeouts. We talk about a lot. There's a lot of WNBA action in there, right? Caitlin Clark just set the WNBA record for assists in a game, and she is a rookie, right? Angel Reese, obviously double-double records. We are having one of the best WNBA seasons ever. And so you can get in on all the action there as well. You can 100 times your money, turn $10 into 1,000. One of the great promos of PrizePicks, which they have a ton of all the time. So download the app, keep an eye on all those great promotions they have all the time, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for another one where your first deposit can get matched up to $100. Again, that's LOCKEDONMLB for a PrizePicks first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked on Tigers. Appreciate y'all for making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. And we will be back on a Monday recapping a baseball series. My goodness, it's been a long week, but we are back. Also, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today for free 24/7 coverage of the sports world from all of our great hosts here at Locked On. You can subscribe for free, again, on YouTube, Locked On Sports Today, or check it out for free in the Amazon Fire TV channels app. So want to talk about a John Morosi tweet. Morosi, obviously, a lot of Michigan ties, tweets about the Tigers often. And one of the big things he brought up this week was that there may be a future without Spencer Torkelson in it in the Tigers' plans. That was worded really poorly. Spencer Torkelson may not be a part of the future Tigers' plans. That's a much better way of wording it, direct and to the point, always what you're taught. So I do a horrible job at that if you haven't found out. So I just want to really break down what this means. This is something we talked about actually before he tweeted this, probably about a week ago now, maybe earlier this week. I don't know. Time is a construct. But we really broke down the fact that Torkelson has been struggling in AAA and the huge question marks surrounding his future with the organization. And I think the context in which we talked about it on here was more of this winter, how you are going to prepare first base going forward, right? Are you just going to go into 2025, which we'll talk about the 2025 schedule here in a second, but are you just going to go into 2025 like, oh, Torkelson's first base? Obviously, I don't think that's possible, right? Unless he comes up and absolutely rakes in the second half. I don't know how you can possibly be confident in his future, just period, I guess, at first base. I don't know how you can do that. So I think there are huge question marks surrounding that, which again, we've talked about, but I also think the interesting angle he brought up specifically was how this affects the Tigers' deadline. And the Detroit Tigers have made it very clear. They want players that are athletic and can play multiple positions, that are versatile, that maybe fit into the puzzle in multiple ways or in a way that is different than they are currently playing for their high school, college, or current organization team. So I think that when it comes to, Morosi was like, oh, well, the Orioles, if they're to trade Skubal, right, which we talked about earlier this week for the first time, and we'll talk about a billion more times as well. If you are to look at the Orioles farm system, a lot of their top prospects have played all over the infield and could play first base, et cetera, et cetera. I do not believe that the Detroit Tigers organization is ever, with Scott Harris in charge, going to seek out a primary playing first baseman. I think that they are way too heavily invested in and leaning into the mindset of, again, versatility and athleticism. And I also think they realize that from a positional value perspective, and I know I'm going to lose some people here that are not as analytical or would rather they just find somebody who can actually play first base well permanently. I would like them to find someone who can play first base well too. It's been a while. I'm with you. I just don't think they're going to go, okay, who's only a double A, for instance, only first baseman. I don't think they're going to seek that type of player out. And one of the reasons why is because when you look at the current Tigers organization, there is a boatload of people who are poor defenders at their primary position, and people are like, well, you should try him at first base. It's like everybody. Like Colt Keith, there's a lot of rumblings about that. Jace Young, there's a lot of rumblings about that. Justin Henry Malloy, there's been rumblings about that. Kerry Carpenter, there's been rumblings about that over the last 2 years. Like, it's remarkable. Like, every single, and for a front office that's so keen on, we want to prioritize defense, and we're not going to call up Malloy all of last year because he's not good defensively, and we're waiting on Young because he's not good defensively. For an organization who is caring so much about defense, for them to, like, all of their good minor leaguers and young major leaguers are just terrible defensively, it's remarkable. And obviously there's exceptions. Parker Meadows is one of the best defensive center fielders I've ever seen wear a Tigers uniform. I'm not saying everyone's just garbage, but like it's just so to reel this back and get off my ADHD tangent here. When focusing on a trade for this deadline, whether it's a Skubal trade or not, right? When you can talk about Flaherty and Carson Kelly and whatnot as well. I'm not just restricting this to the Baltimore Orioles system like Morosi was, but I do not believe that the Tigers are going to look and go, oh, well, we need to find a first base only player at the trade deadline. I don't think they subscribe to that logic. I think they would rather find somebody who maybe can play third, and if he sucks over there, then they can try him over at first base type of thing. And all of this is just contingent on their belief in Spencer Torkelson, which seems to be dwindling. And I think that that's just universal. I don't think that that's just a front office thing. I think that's universal throughout the fan base, throughout the organization, and probably just throughout the baseball world. And I'm not trying to kick this dude while he's down. I would love nothing more than for him to turn it around, start hitting like crazy, and be a 40 home run hitter that everyone once thought he was going to be. But the fact of the matter is he's been demoted, and his numbers are borderline worse than they were in Toledo or are in Toledo than they were not overall at the major league level this season, because that's obviously why he was demoted. But if you look at his major league career as a whole and you average those numbers out, what he's doing in Toledo is not a whole lot better than those numbers. And that's just really, really sad and frustrating. I'm sure it's frustrating for him. It's a mental side of things as well for him. I have zero doubt that there's a large mental impact on that too. And then my final point here before we get to another break and we move on is just, when it comes to what to do with Torkelson in the second half and post-trade deadline, what do you do? Do you just say, screw it? I know some people that are just screw it. What? Just call him up. Especially if the Tigers are out of it, just call him up, see if he can adjust to major league pitching. But in the same vein, if he can't adjust to AAA pitching, I don't know if I want to just make it worse. It really a rock and a hard place. And I think, unfortunately, we are just really heading towards a direction which is just so nuts. Who would have thought 6 months ago that we'd be talking about, is Torkelson even going to be on this team next year? Still got, options to the minors. Obviously, there's still different avenues that they can take with this. He can still be on the roster. They can still earmark some at-bats. They can still see what they have in him. I am of the belief that they're going to give him probably post-deadline when the Tigers are out of it. And if he doesn't prove anything or show anything, they're going to go into next year with, or go into the winter rather, with a plan to bring in somebody to play first base, and it's not going to be Torkelson. But they play the games for a reason. Hopefully there's an adjustment here in the second half, and he hits like crazy, and this is just not a conversation whatsoever. But I'm not exactly holding my breath for that to happen either. Let's keep the ball rolling. Want to talk about the 2025 Tigers schedule that was released on Thursday, and then we will preview the Blue Jays this weekend. We will do all of that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at SupplyHouse. Get supplies from the site that is made for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed and helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge as well by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Master Trade program. Every trade master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. So join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from free memberships at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Also got to talk to y'all about our friends over at FanDuel. I love sports and I love them so much. I never want them to stop. And this week has been really tough for that. But as the playoffs are now to an end, and thankfully we're out of the All-Star break, but you had that this week too, we get fewer and fewer games. And the sports just aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all so much for tuning in as always. So want to talk a little bit about the 2025 Tigers schedule. So interesting. I'll say this. Now that the Tigers play everybody, right, and every team plays everybody now with the balanced scheduling, you play your division a little bit less, and you play every single team in baseball at least once. The strength of schedule thing I don't really care about as much anymore, right? Good teams find a way, man. Just win. I'm not going to use a MLB schedule over 162 games where they start when it's cold out and they end when it's cold out. It's a long season. And I don't really subscribe to that logic. I don't really care. We've talked about that on the month-to-month previews and breakdowns that we have here as well. I know some people really like it, so I try to throw it in there, at the beginning of every month just to talk about who we're going to play. But you play everybody, you're right. You got to go into every series expecting to win. You can't. This isn't like college football. Who else has been playing nonstop, by the way? This isn't college football, though, where you go into a game and you're like, oh, this is one of the worst teams in the country, and I'm U of M, so I'm just going to steamroll them, right? These are all professionals and you play everybody. So you just got to go in and have. So when talking about the schedule, I think the one thing, first off, there's a great article that was written by Ryan Ford of The Freep. He breaks down the entire 2025 schedule, all the biggest things. Go read that, check out, support The Freep and his work and whatnot. But one of the biggest things that jumped out to me was just, I think this is the earliest start ever for the Detroit Tigers. I think it's only a day earlier than this year, but a day or two, something like that. But it's a really, really early start, and they're actually done with the season before October, which is something I'm not sure I've ever seen before. I'm trying to remember back to how the league was structured when there was still interleague play and the Astros were still in the NL and whatnot. Maybe there was some years where it was earlier like that, but for the most part, I mean, we're usually going into, the first weekend at least in October. And so the season being over in September is something that jumped out at me. And then the biggest thing, if we just want to talk about recency bias, like the most immediate effect that is going to be had on this schedule is the Tigers open the 2025 season with a West Coast road trip. Boo, 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 gross, vomit, disgusting. I hate it. Thanks for asking. Again, you play everybody. You were going to have a West Coast road trip at some point, but I mean, geez, man, I'm pretty sure we start with the Dodgers and then like Seattle's in there at some point. It's just gross, dude. I am so not a fan of it, but it is what it is. You would have had to do it anyway, like I said. So just wanted to highlight that. That was something that released on Thursday. Let's end the show by previewing this series against the Toronto Blue Jays. The Tigers going to play it a little bit safe with Skubal, even though he only pitched the 1 inning during the All-Star break. He is not pitching this weekend in Toronto. It's going to be Jack Flaherty. Flaherty going game 1 is interesting because that allows, rather than just 2 starts from now until the deadline, that gives him 3, including, I believe, the day of or the day before the trade deadline as well. So that'll be super interesting to see how that plays out, if he makes it that far, or if that is, well, I don't know, just for like negotiation standpoint and like the back injury, is he going to actually start all 3 of those games? I have a lot of questions surrounding that decision, but I also agree that you probably have to do that as well, just given everything that's going to be thrown out there about him from now until the end of July. So that's going to be game 1. The pitching matchups are going to be Jack. This is according to Evan Woodbury of M Live, by the way. Jack Flaherty on Friday, Reese Olson on Saturday, Cater Montero on Sunday, and the Tigers, it looks like, are going to see Kevin Gausman, Chris Bassett, and Jose Barrios. So going to see how that plays out. Evan also notes that that is not official from the Blue Jays yet, but that is kind of what it appears like it's going to shape out to be. I think the most interesting thing that I'm looking at from the Blue Jays perspective, outside of the fact that I just want the Tigers to keep winning games, is what happens with them if they keep losing, right? And I don't want to make this Locked On Jays. Great show, by the way. But I like, what do they do? Like, what do they do if they lose? Do you trade Bichette and Vlad with a 1.5 years of control? You'd probably get a heck of a haul, but that would be entering a rebuild. You would be blowing this up and starting over, which is just so crazy. It feels like yesterday Bichette and Vlad were like 2 of the top prospects in all of baseball. Vlad was the number 1 prospect ahead of Fernando Tatis Jr. In, I believe, what was that, the 2020 season. Mize was like 4 or 5 that year as well. But just really interesting to me that they might be pulling the plug on this. I don't think they have the stones to do it, and I'm not sure they should necessarily. Those are 2 talented guys. Bichette's obviously had a rough year. But I think, you know, in the grand scheme of things, you play to win games, and they have a core that isn't, you know, costing them tons of money. You got to hold on to that for as long as you can. Give it one more winter and try to just kind of go for it here at the end. But I'll be really interested in seeing that. And like, this is a really beatable Blue Jays team. This is not, notice I didn't say winnable. I said beatable. Very important distinction there for all of the superstitious out there. But I don't know, man. Like, you're 47-50. They're 44-52. You have a better record than the Toronto Blue Jays. Like, they are really, really sliding. And so I think it's interesting from that perspective, just what do the Blue Jays do? And from the Tigers, you have a real opportunity to keep the ball rolling. You have 3 against Toronto. Then you have all AL Central after Toronto until the trade deadline. Is all interdivision. You have 4 games against Cleveland, 3 against Minnesota, and then 2 against Cleveland again. You have a real opportunity to catapult yourself and kind of crawl, just absolutely army crawl your way back into relevance here. But you're going to have to hit the baseball. Shocking. You're going to have to, the offense is going to have to look how it has in the first half of July here. So this is the opportunity to get it started, man. And it's against a very, very flawed and potentially like non-existent team in the Blue Jays. Obviously, the Blue Jays aren't going to like take the run at the Expos and literally not exist, but like this core could literally not exist in 3 weeks. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's possible. Stay hot, baby. We talked about it earlier this week. Second best record in the month of July. Your Detroit Tigers. Just win, baby. Bless you, boys. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day, and we will be back on Monday recapping this series against the Toronto Blue Jays. I appreciate you all greatly. Thanks for rocking with me throughout the week here. We have a lot more baseball to talk about the rest of the way, and obviously the trade deadline looming. We're all caught up. All right. Catch you on Monday. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll see y'all then. Go Tigers.